Today, we're going to be taking a look at a job that cements itself in any team by providing support that affects the very foundations of combat itself, the Oracle. The Oracle specializes in manipulating key combat rules, such as speeding up or slowing down turn frequencies of a target, and creating or removing elemental weaknesses, then turning around and taking full advantage of their actions to tear the enemy a new one. The Oracle's stats and weapon proficiencies may not look like much to write home about at first, but trust me, they have the ability to even change that on a whim as well. So let's first, as always, dive into the Oracle's specialties, starting with In One's Element. When targeting an elemental weakness of an enemy with a spell, the damage of said spell will deal 40% more damage. There's also an added benefit of all elemental spells costing 40% less MP to cast. Both of these bonuses only apply to elemental magic, so non-elemental spells don't get either buffs, nor do abilities like the Pictomancer's Chiaro and Skuro, since they are considered abilities and not spells by the game. Despite this, the spells that do benefit not only get 2 awesome buffs to their damage and cost, but these buffs also stack with others like them, allowing you to increase their damage and cheapen their cost even further. As we'll see soon enough, the Oracle benefits from this specialty greatly, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. The Oracle's second specialty is Moonlighting. Once you have unlocked this specialty, the Oracle's base stats and weapon proficiencies are completely swapped out for those of their currently equipped sub-job's base stats and weapon proficiencies. If you don't have a sub-job equipped, you just have the base Oracle stats. As you might guess, this can be quite handy when outfitting your Oracle, as they can effectively mimic any other job in the game, at least when it comes to abilities and stats. Take note that specialties aren't mimicked when moonlighting, so you're free to focus on just getting the most out of the skills and stats of the job you pick, and you'll need to have other ways of getting access to those specialties. The Oracle's special move is the Hastening. Essentially, what this ability does, without trying to get into too many details, is that it makes everyone in your party act almost instantaneously for a few turns, letting you get a leg up on a fight. The bonus effect of the Hastening is a 15% increase to the party's magic attack and defense. With specialties out of the way, let's move on to combat abilities, starting with Quick and Quick-Ga. Quick increases hit count by 50%, while Quick-Ga increases the hit count of a target by 100%. Both of these spells increase the hit count of their targets when using the attack command, which essentially boils down to the benefactor of these buffs being able to reach a higher damage ceiling with their conventional attacks. Quick and Quick-Ga don't guarantee more damage delivered, they just sort of open up the door for more damage to be possible. Next is Slow and Slow-Ga. Both of these spells increase the action cost of skills done by their target, effectively making their turns come around slower. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a reliable number for how significant either of these spells affect their targets are, but Slow-Ga in particular seems to be quite effective. Use these spells against bosses that might be lapping you in turns or are incredibly destructive once their turn comes around. Make sure they don't ever get that turn to do something. Next is Haste and Haste-Ga. These skills are the opposite of Slow, speeding up the rate at which their target's turn comes around again. Haste makes its target roughly 17% faster, while Haste-Ga is about 30%. If you need someone's turn to come around more often, these spells got you covered. Now onto something really interesting. Elemental Impairment, Supplement, and Ward. These 3 skills let the Oracle shift elemental affinities for themselves, their allies, and their opponents, being able to create or remove weaknesses and resistances with the click of a button. Let's go down the list one by one and talk about them individually. Elemental Impairment allows for the Oracle to select a specific element, let's use fire for these examples, and then lower a target's fire resistance by 1. As a reminder, here's a visual for how resistances work in Bravely Default 2. So, if an enemy was neutral to fire damage, they would now be weak to it. If they were immune to fire damage beforehand, they will now only resist it. This is an amazing skill that lets you set up specific weaknesses on an enemy for either the Oracle themselves or their allies to make use of. The only caveat of this skill is that Elemental Impairment is considered a status ailment, meaning that it has a chance of failing to land. So you might need to try a few times in order to get the debuff to stick. Elemental Supplement will imbue its target's conventional attacks and abilities with a specified element for 2 turns, allowing all those actions to also deal elemental damage. That little bit about Elemental Supplement affecting abilities is pretty huge here too, as while you might think that only physical jobs might be able to make use of this, jobs like the Red Mage with their magic will also have their spells gain newly added supplements as well, which can be amazing for attempting to trigger Nuisance or just wanting to have as much elemental coverage as possible. Elemental Supplement pairs super well with Impairment, as if we go with our fire example from earlier, once you've set a fire weakness on an enemy with Impairment, you can then imbue your party's attacks with fire from Elemental Supplement and then send them straight to hell immediately. Then there is Elemental Ward, which is essentially the opposite of Elemental Impairment, raising its target's resistance with a specified element by 1 for 3 turns. Not much else to say, but you can take anywhere from less damage to outright absorbing it, which I would say is pretty good. Now with that out of the way, next we have Triple, Triplara, and Triplaga. Each of these attacks follow the same rules, with the only difference being the potency of the attacks dealt increasing as you climb higher, so I'll be explaining them all at once. When casting one of these triple spells, up to 3 magic attacks will be performed, with each of them either being a fire, water, or lightning-based spell. So, the order of the events are as followed. You cast triple, 1 to 3 hits are dealt, with each successive hit having a 75% chance of activating. Then, each of those individual attacks will be one of 3 previous elements stated earlier, meaning that you can get new elements each time, or you can get multiple copies in one action. Meaning that you can get new elements each time the ability is cast, or you can get multiple copies of one element in a single cast. So there's a little bit of luck tied to how much damage you can deal with these spells, as the amount of casts done and what element they will be is mostly out of your hand. However, don't underestimate how strong it can be to cast up to 3 spells in one action, especially if you've been implanting weaknesses with elemental impairment. Next up is Reflect. When applying this buff to a target, all magic-based abilities will be repelled off of them onto a target on the opposing side of the battlefield. This includes magic attacks, magical buffs, and even healing spells, so be mindful of how you utilize the spell, be it for defense for your party, offense, or disruption of an enemy's plans. Abilities like the Freelancer's Square 1 bypass Reflect and will remove that buff from a target, so you don't need to fear waiting out its duration if you have that skill on hand. And last up for Oracle combat abilities is Stop. This spell has the chance to inflict Stop on an enemy, preventing them from progressing their turn counter or naturally gaining BP. Not many enemies can be affected by Stop, but for the ones that can, this can be absolutely busted. And now we move on to the single passive ability at the Oracle's disposal, being Noble Sacrifice. If the user of this passive is KO'd in battle, they will activate a once per battle ability that will instantly revive all other KO'd allies with full health. This is basically a Hail Mary play that can get your team back in a fight, especially if the person with Noble Sacrifice is the last one to fall in a fight. This passive will still trigger, meaning that you'll have 3 party members back with full HP instantly. Another thing to note is that while Noble Sacrifice is a once per battle passive, it can be equipped on multiple party members, and each of them get 1 use of it, meaning you can technically get up to 4 uses of this passive in a single fight. The Oracle has a lot going for it just by itself, as it can mesh well with pretty much any team that wants to make use of elemental weaknesses and immunities, while being able to provide speed control when magic-based strategies aren't called for. However, despite this job being quite capable on its own, it is also one of the few jobs in Bravely Default 2 that really relies a lot on its sub-job, as its base stats and weapon affinities are entirely centered around what you have currently equipped. Now, while the Bard's sub-job stats may not be the ideal choice for dealing damage or survival, despite what I just said, the abilities that the job provides can effectively turn your Oracle into an unstoppable buffing machine that can increase your party stats even higher while being better at turn manipulating with Shut Up and Dance. Red Mage is an excellent option for aggression, as not only do you get access to Nuisance, if you want to run sub-job Specialties 1, which when paired with elemental supplements can let your Oracle fish for almost any element in the game, but this pairing is also excellent for damage dealing and healing. The stats of the Red Mage are balanced enough to where you won't be gaining or losing anything too important, and you gain access to better weapon options. The Salve Maker is a personal pick of mine, as similar to Bard, you essentially become the team's one-man show, being able to provide powerful elemental buffs to the party, act as the team's BP battery and healer, and attempt to apply elements to an enemy. Not to mention that the Salve Maker's base stats give the Oracle a lot more survivability, letting them stay on the field longer. But honestly, pretty much any job can be a good fit for the Oracle thanks to how universally helpful their abilities are to any job. Be mindful of the stat changes made and adjust accordingly, but otherwise, run wild with the choices that the Oracle brings you. As stated many times now, the Oracle is a flexible job with some of the most powerful tools in the game that almost any party can make use of. Honestly, the only cons I can really think of are only applicable when you first get access to the job and completely go away once you get access to moonlighting. Sure, their own base stats and weapon affinities suck really bad, but you can just instantly replace that with literally anything else to rectify that problem. And the Oracle's own skills are strong enough that you don't even really need to focus on using any other abilities from their subjobs. You can pick just for their stats, or you can go the other way and go for their abilities and ignore the stats entirely. Elemental Impairment and Supplement can completely flip boring one-sided fights into a resource battle, constantly trying to upkeep your weakness implant and resistances while swinging with powerful elemental attacks. Even when used as a sub-job, the Oracle opens up so many fun, powerful strategies that many players wouldn't even think possible initially, which in turn means more creativity and replayability. And we love that around here. Oracle, you're alright in my book. Now we come to the fashion tier list, and honestly, it's fine. I like the ceremonial robes with what seems to be an eye motif going on, which I can definitely see some people thinking it's a little creepy. And the floating ornament behind each character is something unique that pretty much no other job in the game has. There's nothing really external going around in the other job designs. It's really only Oracle that has this. Each party member, as usual, focuses on a main color, but Seth and Gloria have a brighter robe with darker colors, and Elvis and Adele have darker main robes with slightly brighter colors. If I had to pick a favorite, it would probably either go to Elvis or Adele, since I like Adele's blue and black color scheme the most, and that seems to be a reoccurring trend. But honestly, I think Elvis pulls off this kind of holier-than-thou look the best. Overall, decent set though.